delighted to have our speaker this evening, Paul Tange, Noritaka Tange in Japan,
yes.
With us from Tange Associates. I think you've all seen his biographical material, so and you know all about him. Suffice it to say that he has tremendous international experience. He trained internationally at Harvard and is a leading figure in that world today. We're in a building not all of you know necessarily that Tange Associates built, that Paul's father, Tange Kenzō, designed. I think you were a young architect at the time.
Very young.
That has created a UN headquarters, a meaningful UN headquarters in Japan. The only other one in Asia is in Bangkok, the head of the headquarters of the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. This building in many ways is an iconic building in Tokyo now. I think over the years it's gotten absorbed into the psyche of residents of Tokyo, and this is a neighborhood that young people frequent and enjoy, and so in that sense also has been absorbed by young Tokyoites and young people internationally who adore Tokyo. One feature of the building, which was in effect part of the neighborhood's design, is the open plaza in front of it. Each of our neighboring buildings also have quite large plazas, but things got added to them. Sculpture in one case, a stairwell in the other case, whereas this one remained entirely open, which has led to it having a civic vocation in Shibuya Ward for fire drills, public fire drills, counterterrorism drills, things like this, which we are happy to host. It also occasionally hosts demonstrations by communities worried about this and that. That also we are happy to host as long as we believe they're going to be peaceful and essentially not disruptive. And on weekends now, we host a very popular farmers market on the plaza, which has spread to other open spaces on our ground floor because this was a building built with a lot of open space. So Paul, without lingering for too long on this building, because there's so much else to discuss with you, I did want to ask you about all of that and how sometimes buildings discover their vocation as they go along.
Yes, David, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for having me here today, and it's a great honor. And well, talking about this building, I think it was sometimes architects plan something, and we try to plan it in the best of knowledge. But once we give the building to the owner, user, it will take its own life. And so in this case, it came to be best usage. As you know, the front open space is required by the government. So building has to set back so that you can see from next buildings, they all have this open space. But I think ironically, this UNU Plaza has been kept open because I think some of the Japanese government people are here, so I have to be very diplomatic, but they did not know how to converse with UNU side so that this open space were kept quite clean, not being utilized. And then I think this was the reason that it was not invaded by other elements,
Yes.
Which was very successful. And then also, of course, this building, we tried to make, of course, it is a UNU, United Nations University building, so we wanted to have some kind of iconic gesture. But this shape of the building did not come from the architects only wish to create iconic building. One side of the building is a sunshade requirement.
Yes.
So even we tried to make a building square, we couldn't.
I see.
So one side was like this.
Yes.
Then what do we do with the other side to make it iconic? Well, of course, make it symmetrical. So this was a reason that's like this in one way. And it's a series of thinking process. And then, please don't think of me as a easygoing person that was going to, one side is like this, the other side is like that, and it's going to symmetrical. Also, functionally, this was very challenging project because United Nations University, as a university on a lower level, needed a big conference space.
Which we have.
Which you have. And then, as you go up, the building needed office spaces. And on top of the building, the residence of the rector. So there's a variety of sizes and spaces, and how do we accommodate that in one building? It was very, it was like a series of function, putting together the function in whatever the layers, and they come out to be perfect in a way, because this building structure is not all the columns coming right through. Its main structure is the shape of the building itself. And this is a reason that in the side there's a mega brace to support the building. And some of the floor, when it's set back, is a brace is on a horizontal level. So that way that we can free the space in the middle. So in one sense, large hole in the center without the column, and then as you go up, and then at the end, your residence today it has to have a human scale because it's your home.
Yes.
So I think those things can be put together, and it came out very nicely. And also so that the function and requirement of the sunshade and so on, everything came into one, and luckily we can create some symmetrical, iconic element of the building at the end. And as far as the openness is concerned, as I said, the front is required. And then we wanted to have Plaza because we place all the elements, functions, and we could create the open Plaza. I was told that, David, that now farmers market is coming into the building. I mean, there was a lot of process as well. It was at one point when we started, it was only in the front, farmers market. And then where is the security line?
Yes.
We were very concerned because UNU has to be secure. But now I think, luckily, Japan is a very safe place, and people are very respectful of the building itself. So now I think you can utilize the ground level much more freely.
Indeed. And we're very lucky because of our identity as a university. If you think of other UN headquarters around the world, they're very difficult to get into, in fact. And they do fewer and fewer public events because the security is so restrictive. And all of those who have worked in this building and the current generation of my colleagues and I feel that while we need security, as you say rightly, we also want to keep the building open. It's a major public building in Tokyo, and we want people to feel welcome here And this series of conversations is part of that. The conference rooms you mentioned are above us. Some of you will have been to them. But conference rooms can be pretty intimidating. They're large, they're formal. They don't necessarily induce dialogue. They induce speeches, by and large. So that's why we do this series in here, because it's a much more intimate space. Yes. And everybody is quite close to our guests. Now, moving beyond this building, I wanted to ask you about something that has struck me in Japan. I've been here nearly 5 years now, and of course one's impressions evolve over time. And it's obvious that in Japan there is a huge love of nature and beauty, but there's also a great attachment to functionality and economy. And finally, there's the element of disasters, either war in the 20th century or natural disasters. So all of this creates a mix that architects in Japan, and there are so many of them who are highly successful internationally, but they want to go on working in Japan. This mix of preferences, likes and dislikes, you have to deal with. And I wanted to ask you what that feels like and how you organize your thoughts about what Japanese clients want in buildings.
Well, I think Japanese clients want, I mean, we at Tange's have two main philosophy, and that was created by my father, but we carry on, even though the decades after decades. Of course, needs are changing, but we keep the philosophy straight, which is actually city and architecture. Architecture cannot exist without environment. Environment could be open or very dense or whatever. So we really have to understand that, where the building's gonna go. If you ask us to design, again, UNU somewhere else, it will not be the same, of course, shape. And another thing that, we always believed in is tradition and creativity. How do we merge these two things? Because Japan has a great tradition, history, and so on. And how do we create that into a modern living or modern architecture? How do we merge that? So I think this is a constant challenge. I mean, yes, Japanese buildings are very much open historically. We didn't have stone walls to separate from inside and outside. We are, European architecture is a stone architecture, and versus Japan is a wooden architecture. And the wooden architecture will not last forever. If you go to Italy, where we work quite a lot, they said, well, my building is very new, it's only 200 years old. And even Japanese important shrine, every 20 years, it will be rebuilt.
Yes.
So it's a different scale that we are talking about. And so by rebuilding, it really stimulates the creativity. And also we are an agricultural country. So agricultural country, people move around a lot compared to European society in some ways. So, and then we don't, therefore, this rebuilding or moving around, wooden architecture, all this stimulate a lot of architects. Having said that, I'll contradict myself because profession architect is very new to Japan because it was always a carpenter who was building the building.
Yes.
We didn't have any architectural drawing. and you just put, column lines with a paint or wood on
Peg.
on a wood board, leftover wood board, and then this is how they do the structural system. And but in Europe, architect is a profession from long time ago. So I think it's having said that, architects are rather new line of business. But this creativity came because of all this natural disaster, and then all of a sudden we found ourselves in an empty space, and we have to recreate, et cetera, et cetera. So in a lot of ways, especially in 20th century, we've been quite fortunate. My father has been very fortunate in a sense that there are a series of events. Some of them are not happy event, but we found ourselves to rebuild the country after the war, after the earthquake, and so on. So I think that stimulates a lot of creativity in a very sarcastic way, in a way.
Now, at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, a disproportionately large number of Japanese architects and firms work internationally, work very successfully, are considered iconic all over the world. So it's somehow been whatever it is that makes architecture work in Japan, and it does, also seems to work very well outside Japan.
Well, I think sensitivity as our culture is, in a way, somewhat well received. I can talk about myself because I was always trained by my father to balance between tradition and modernity or modern architectures. How do we introduce, which made us think that how do we make the space or building well received by different countries. We worked in more than 30 different countries. And what we try to do is try to understand what is the essence of that country, city, region, and try to understand. Because human being is very similar in one way. You feel good if you have in back of your mind something that you felt good about. So that's what we are trying to do in Japanese setting. How do we introduce Japanese cultural element into a modern building? And then by going to different countries, we will do the same thing, try to understand. Of course, we need the help of local architect or a local corroborator, because otherwise you would not understand the culture overnight. But I think bringing those elements into that. And the Japanese are quite sensitive about that. And we are not also scared of, tear down the building and rebuild. So because of the wooden culture, we have no choice because wooden building would not last forever.
Yeah.
So I think this kind of two things put together make us quite flexible to go into different countries. And also, I think many creative or atelier type smaller architectural firms are well received in foreign countries because here in Japan, there are atelier type of architectural firm and also a large-scale architectural firm. And those, nowadays we work together because large-scale company has a stability, and then atelier type architects have a more creativity. Not that I'm saying that in a large-scale company it does not have a creativity, but I mean, having both together is a good thing. That's why the Kengo Kuma is designing with large Japanese architectural firm to create a new national stadium for 2020 Olympics.
Yes.
So that's the kind of, and then we collaborate a lot with a different group of people because that, but before that, that if they did not corroborate, many of the atelier type architect has to look for a job outside. And we could do a lot of things that, you know, in Japan, everything is very conservative, so we could not test a lot of things. But if you go abroad, we could be a little bit, they're more acceptable to this creativity. And I think my father was one of the first one to go outside of Japan in 70s. And then I think this is because at one point, like in Tokyo, one of the governor was very strict about sunshade and so on. So they stopped creating buildings. So we have to survive somehow. So I guess we have to go abroad. So I think this was many of the series of events made us or force us to go abroad. And if one goes, then the Japanese are very good in following. So I think okay, it's not so bad. You know, so I think it was my father was one of these trendsetter to go abroad, I guess.
Indeed. Now, I'm going to ask Paul one more question, perhaps two, but then it's over to you. So please be thinking about what you'd like to know from him while we chat a bit longer. Paul, you actually reside in Singapore, and I know that in recent times, your firm has done a tremendous amount of construction in China, and indeed fueled by the economic miracle that China has had. One of the things that has flourished is foreign architects in China designing iconic buildings there. And I wanted to ask you how, as you have so much experience of China, what that experience has been like for you.
I think we have been working in so many different countries from 1970s, and we learned that where the economy is, that's where the new creativity can be appreciated. So we have started from Japan, and then to Europe, then Asia, to Middle East and Asia. I mean, that's what the growth of the economy was.
Yes.
So that's where we did what we did. And of course, recent years, China is the mover of the global economy. And also they are very open to new ideas. They are quite bullish about new ideas. So I think it's and of course the population is there. There are a lot of times we work in the different countries and there's no population. There is stop to their growth.
Yes.
Let's look at Dubai, for example. Now they're back, but actually at one point, population is very small, but there's so many buildings went up, and then where are we going to go after that? And then Middle East crisis happens, and everybody leaves, and then there's empty buildings. Singapore, as wonderful as because I reside there, it's a wonderful country. I mean, you know, it's a small city, nation becoming global economic center. It's amazing. But still, now they're suffering the number of population there. So I think it is, that's the way world is. And then for that, China has a population and then the wealth. So they are looking for something quite outrageous. So maybe 40, 50 years ago what Japan was looking for. And then at that time, my father and his friends were very prosperous in Japan. And then that trend moved to Middle East and Asia. And now China is the new market. And then I think history is like a repeat itself. And I think next will be most probably the countries like Myanmar, Cambodia, and then a few other countries will join to this in Asia.
Now, one last one from me. Many years ago, in a place you know well, Boston, I was studying negotiation technique. And we were told that the two professions that engage in negotiations most necessarily are police work, policemen, who are constantly trying to get the public to do what they think they need to do, and architects, because they meet clients, and the clients don't always agree on what they want. In fact, if they're a married couple and it's a house, often they have very different visions of what the house should be. And I wanted to ask you about the psychological dimension of architecture in that sense. How do you both have a vision but also bring along others to sharing it, and how do you compromise on the vision?
If I have the answer, I'll be a better architect. I don't usually do a single house.
Yes.
Because I always have difficulty convincing one side. And the divorce rate gets highest when they're building a new house.
Yes.
So be careful. If you decide to build a house, make sure that your marriage is solid. Because even solid, it may not last. Because wife will come and say, I like this wall to be red. And I think it's reasonable to have blue colors. And I will bring 100 shades of blue. And even wife who loves red would pick one. But it never succeeds. The wall will be red. So why bother, right? But architects always keep on trying. So we try to convince this way, that way. But, at the end, client wins. So I think, but, we try to be sensible. A lot of clients comes to me and said, oh, I don't like glass building. I want stone building. I mean, we are capable architects to design all sorts of buildings. So
Yes.
But I throw in one or two ideas of glass building. Because it is, and then a lot of times, client ending up building a glass building. Why? Because they have certain idea of glass building. And that type of glass building they don't like.
Yes.
So they say no. But they do not know, I mean, it's a typology that they don't like. But if I show them different way of using the glass, they don't mind. So it's just try to understand what they're talking about and try to provide the answer to what they're looking for.
Great.
For example, this one. You may say, oh, I love this. Then I have to quickly understand why you love this. Is this the transparency? Or is it this kind of indentation? Or is it because it contains the water? And if you are interested in containing the water, I can talk about, look at this curvature, David. It's fantastic. So look at this transparency, you see? But it doesn't mean anything to you. So I think it's just a question of understanding the needs of the client and then try to answer that question is the most important part of our profession. So I think it's a conversation is important, because they say, if you say this is wonderful, I have no idea why you consider this wonderful.
You have to tease it out.
Yeah.
Now over to those of you in the audience. Ma'am, in the second row here. Wait for the microphone. Hannah will be bringing it to you.
Hi, thank you.
And please identify yourself first.
Thank you for your presence here. I am a master's student here at the United Nations University. I would like to add some steroids to the last question. In sustainability science, we talk a lot about transdisciplinarity and the co-creation of knowledge. And I think we have a lot to learn from architecture based on your last answer. You have a lot of co-creation with the client. In that sense, although the collaboration of architects and clients is a private relationship and a private contract, it also has impacts on the community and the commons.
Yes.
So I would like to hear from you, how do you see architecture can adopt more participative, transdisciplinary approach to include the community, the local authorities, because you also have to answer their questions.
Yes.
Great.
And find
Yeah.
their needs.
Great question. Will you have an answer? Because then I have to think a little bit. No, but as I said, architecture cannot exist in a vacuum. So, of course, this is the client's land, and then, we, of course, have to fulfill all the regulation and whatnot, but they practically can do anything. But, of course, it does not, it doesn't belong to that owner alone. We are notorious to make huge model because we have to understand the environment where that building goes. And as I said, this building will not be the same shape if it goes somewhere else. So I think it is true. It is not only the dialogue between client and an architect, but architect's understanding of the neighborhood, which means some conversation must take place. And also you add culture, tradition, and all these things. It has to belong to that area. But there's a danger to that as well, because in democratic world, sometimes solution would not come out. So architect has to be intelligent enough to absorb what are the requirements and the comment from the community, comment from the client, and all these things, and try to balance it. This balancing act is one of the most difficult things. Luckily, not United Nations University, but we have done a lot of universities elsewhere. We go and visit each dean, ask what they want, and at the end, the building becomes 3 times larger. Then you have to go crazy, try to reduce it to the right size. And so I think, yes, we have to be a communicator to the client and also to the community, and we have to find a fine balance. But you have to be not clever in the sense of intelligence, but we have to really take the third person's opinion or step back and really understand what is appropriate for that environment. At the same time, of course, we have to respect the client's needs, but we try to explain if the client does not agree with the communal opinion, we try to find a right balance. At the end of the day, client is a boss, they pay us. You know, I mean, so, but you know, I think it's a very important question, because if it's too much of the community involvement, nothing happens. Because we cannot create architecture which will be acceptable to everybody. Architecture is, at the end of the day, very subjective. Sometimes you like it, sometimes you don't. And I always tell my architect, as long as people stop and look at your building and said, make a comment, we could carry on doing architecture. Hopefully it's a good comment, but we cannot satisfy everybody. When we start creating the building and nobody stops, then that's the time that we shut our door and we go home.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, in negotiation, it's well known that decision-making by committee decision-making, leads to quite low common denominator decisions. So there are always these trade-offs that you bring out in your answers. There's a question behind there, Bobor. In fact, there are two hands. Let's take them one after the other.
Hi. I'm also a master's student here at UNU. I've read that you are going to be part of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. And I just want to ask if you have post-Olympics plans, and what is your opinion about the rising issue of structures being abandoned or underutilized after big events such as the Olympics?
I have to have a very good diplomatic skill to answer this question. I'm an architect, so I'm not that diplomatic. Having ambassador in front of me. I will ask his opinion later whether my answer was correctly put. But anyway, yes, we are very fortunate that we are involved in 2020 Olympics. My father has done a swimming pool for 1964 Olympics, which was very well received, and hopefully one day it will be a World Heritage. Now we are part of the team of 2020 Olympic Aquatic Center. This has a fancy name, Aquatic Center, but it's a swimming pool. So 2 generations of Tanges are providing our effort to same venue, different period. So we are very proud of that. Having said that, I think to get to this point, I think the environment is quite different. 1964 Olympics are Japan coming back to the global scene.
Yeah, coming out party.
Yes, coming out. And then all this devastation, losing the war, and then after that, we re-enter to the global scene. So it was very, very important. But today's Olympic, unlike Rio de Janeiro Olympic, because, they are very already developed country, but it was the first Olympic in South America. So it was still new things. But in Japan, or many other more developed country, it has a very different turns. Even the Beijing Olympic is like, as you said, Beijing is coming, China is coming in to a global scene. Now it's one of the leader of global decision making. Again, but still, it is coming to new, to show the, in a way, where China or who China can represent, etc. But this one is quite different. It's one of the first legacy Olympic, I think. Because Rio, many of the buildings were temporary structure. And quite successful one was the London one. They created a new area, revitalized a new area. So I think that was quite successful. But this one is a very important one, and it will affect the direction of Olympics from this point on. Because, as you said, many of the buildings are underutilized after the Olympic Games and so on. And with Japanese technology and with sensitivity to the environment and so on, and then we try to create as compact as possible, even though at the end of the day, it was not in a perfect situation because of the budget cut and so on. But still, it is a different type of Olympics. I hope it will be very successful so that this trend will carry on to the next Olympics. And so I think how we handle this, not only the hardware, but the software as well, will be a very important solution to the future of Olympic Games.
Great. There was another question right behind.
Yes, my name is Mohamed Kefi from United Nations University.
Could you speak
I'm
a bit
postdoc.
louder, please?
Okay, I'm Mohamed Kefi from United Nations University. I'm a postdoc. So I have a quick question. It's about, do you think that there are a number of people interested by green building means using renewable energy and recycled water can be increasing in the future, even though now the technology is still quite expensive? Thank you.
The question is green architecture, environmentally friendly technology. It's been talked about a lot, I think, but does it have a great future? And
Well, I think it is. I think, technology is here. It's not only talked about things. It is wonderful to have this. We destroyed our environment, so it is our responsibility to recreate this environment. Yes, the technology is there, and we must talk about it. Before, maybe 20 years ago, when we are doing the proposal, we just have to fill the few pages, talk about environment. But now we have to come up with a solution. Otherwise, it is not going to we will not get the job. In what level is something else, from passive to active to all different ways. And then, as you said, it is quite expensive. A lot of times our client said, give me the list of environmentally friendly solution. And then we say passive, little bit active, this and that, and then the cost goes up. And at the end we do passive. And but we have to think about it. Look at LED light. At the beginning it was very expensive. And then nobody, we knew it was wonderful things, but today we can use it. So, the technology is coming very, very fast. But then again, I'd like to go one step farther. Why green? It's one color. Our life is multicolor. This room, which is 15 years old, how green it is today, we are not sure. We look at the carpet, okay, it is this, wallpaper, ceiling material. You put these numbers together, yes, green. I give you gold. Yeah, I give you platinum level, and so on. But do you feel comfortable? At the end of the day, ultimate environmentally friendly space is, do you feel comfortable? We are very sensitive to the environment. If you feel good, I think it is very green. All these numbers and technologies and all these things, you must have. But at the end, we have to go one step farther. Do you feel good in that space? So it's a feeling. I think that is very important. It's not only added number and say, okay, this is environmentally friendly.
It's not an accounting matter.
It is not. It is not. And then, but that's the simplest way to judge. So they like it. You add, this glass is environmental, okay, 2 points. Floor, good, 5 points. You add together, okay, it's over 30 points, okay, I'll give you a stamp of approval. But that is not. Because if you put a good quality glass, but it gets dark, okay, because the sunshine doesn't have to come in, so it's going to be environmentally good.
Yes.
But then you have to turn on the light during the day. Does that make sense? No. So I think it's these benchmark also has to improve greatly. Otherwise, we'll not be having a real meaning of the environmentally friendly space.
Great, thank you. There's a question here in the 4th row, I think. Thank you, Hannah.
Joachim Theis, I'm a child protection consultant. I'm living here in Tokyo. You seem to imply that there are not a lot of opportunities for architects in Japan, and maybe that's also a reason why a lot of companies are working, doing a lot of work outside of Japan. And of course, the general atmosphere and the newspaper reports tend to be on the negative side, with the decline of Japanese population, with all the empty houses, hospitals, and schools, etc. Do you see in these economic, in these demographic trends, any opportunities from the perspective of an architect?
Great question.
Yeah.
But please don't say it too loud, because I lose my possibility of getting the job. No, but actually, it is true. I think it is a good trend in a way, because the population is getting smaller. Then, you don't need this much elementary school, for example. There's an opportunity for that to be something else, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, having said what I said, I didn't mean to be so negative about not having a job here. There are a lot of opportunity today, because this kind of reducing population situation will create more open spaces to create something else, or maybe keep it open space to make the Tokyo greener, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, what I meant was actually sometimes a client is so conservative, which is a nature of Japanese, so they do not want to be more innovative, so that they will settle for not as exciting as a building as what you see in elsewhere. I didn't mean to say that we don't have a job opportunity. Let's look at the center of Tokyo, like Marunouchi, Otemachi area. There's a new building coming up. Actually, I stopped there. I will not make a comment of those buildings looking good or bad. You are the judge. I think there's a questionnaire at the back, and he said, please visit Otemachi, and how many buildings you like, and which one do you think is a newly built or been there for a long time. I don't see much of a creativity in some of the building, which is unfortunate. And also like disaster time. A lot of times, what is important, we value, is to wake up tomorrow morning and start rebuild, so that you recreate the city exactly the way it was before. But a lot of times, I mean, I have experience in Kobe, earthquake. They try to wake up next morning and recreate the exact same cityscape, but then if another disaster comes, fire engine cannot reach because the roads are still narrow. These are the time that we could create more safer city, but they were not ready to think of the future as a safe city, but they said Japanese mentality is let's recreate exactly the same so that, well, it was a bad dream. But sometimes you need widen those roads, et cetera, to recreate new creation of the road network and so on. But then people will say, going back to the lady's question, well, but I lose my land by X amount. We'll say, no, that's my land, don't touch it. Then it's, nothing gonna go forward. So I think we have to have, again, the balance of public opinion and private property rights and so on to create the new city.
I thought I saw a hand in the very back, but perhaps I'm wrong. Let's go to a gentleman back there, Hana, near you, and then we'll come to this side of the...
Hello, my name is Sering. I'm also an architect from Bhutan. My question to you will be, now as the cities are growing old, they're aging, it's time for reconstruction. So I want to know from your expert judgment, how can we be efficient in using those same material to recycle those material and construct those cities back again so that we don't create additional pressure on the environment? What are the technology gaps and what do you recommend in policy? Thank you.
You're from Bhutan?
Yeah.
I'll be there with you. Let's recreate. I think it's a very sensitive question. But we cannot stick to only traditional way of utilizing the same material. We have to be innovative. Because, well, Kyoto is beautiful, but somewhere along the line, we have to create the new buildings, and then having a similar feeling, but still well suited for modern world today. So I think it's, I have never visited your country, but I love to do that because I hear it's a beautiful place. But modernity is coming. Then this beauty may disappear if you are not sensible. So I think we have to go small step and really understand what are feeling of your country. And keeping that feeling, in Japan we say rashisa, and having that feeling and try to accommodate the modern technology. And then there is a way to do it. There's not only one solution either, but if you are sensible enough, I think you can achieve both. I mean, all of a sudden, please don't create a new skyscraper. I mean, because the Chinese town did. Chinese town did. Everybody wants the skyscraper because that shows the symbol of prosperity, but there is no need for it. Then, what is the growth of your country or your city? And then depend on, you just have a vision. You have to have a master plan where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. And is it what you want to be or where you want to be, but is that economically viable to your growth of the country is ready to do that, etc. So I think, you have to balance those things. Maybe in early 90s, I went to Vietnam, to Ho Chi Minh City. Japan Airlines was one of the first one to fly in there, direct flight from Tokyo. And then I see high-rise building. well, high-rise, but we were talking about 20 stories. And then I asked, how many parkings you have? They said 3. Because at that time, everybody was on a bicycle. But nobody going to go in there because modern world, we need a parking structure to accommodate the people occupies our building. So, I mean, I'm not making fun of that situation, but, you know, you have to think far ahead. And then I think today, number of bicycle might not have reduced so much in Vietnam, but the cars are full, filling up the whole street.
Now, one last quick question, the gentleman in the 4th row here. Thank you, Bobo.
My name is Anthony, a landscape architect from Kenya, currently doing my PhD in Chiba University. And I wanted to ask about the collaborations you have, because there have been some problems with local professionals when foreigners go to a country and take all the work. And also, after finishing the projects, what has been the effect on the local architects and landscape architects? Have you made them better by working with them, or what has?
Great question, Anthony. Thank you.
I tried to make the question, answer short. No, the idea is that's the most important thing, the collaboration. We are 80 people operation and working in, right now, 12 different countries, where ongoing projects is maybe 35 projects ongoing. We can do this because we have a great partner in different countries. And you know better than me what are the nature of needs of that location. So without collaboration, we will not go anywhere. I cannot learn your culture overnight. And there will be a lot of discussion, because what I think the usage will be, but at the end, it may not be the same way, because I don't live there. So, but you know, we learn by being there for long enough. I've been in Singapore. I'm permanent resident there now, but I've been in Singapore for 25 years, in and out, and different countries in the, many years. I've never been to Kenya, so please, you know, one day I'd like to go, so you find me a job and I'll be there. Well, great, thank you very much, you know, David. You invited me here, and I can go to Bhutan to get a new project, and then I'll go to Kenya. So, but I think, you know, this collaboration is very important because we grow together. Maybe I will bring you some ideas to you, but you give your idea to me. It's not, you know, one way, one direction. So without local help, our building is not successful at all. And at the end, for me, most important or best compliment I can get as an architect is at the end of the project, we did it together. You know, it's not my work, it is not your work, but everybody's work who are involved. So I think that is what makes architect happy or fulfilling as a profession. Not that I'm saying that architectural fee is low, but I think it's this kind of collaboration make us go forward.
Paul, thank you so much. I noticed something you wouldn't know, because I often participate in the audience or up here in these public conversations. You got many more questions tonight from young people than is often the case. And I think that tells us something about your subject, that it's of real interest to a younger generation. I think it tells us something about you. You bring your subject to life in ways that we all find exciting and make us want to know more, and in a way participate more in the shaping of our cities, our environments, our countrysides for that matter. So thank you so much for spending an evening with us. You all know, I think, or many of you know, that we have some modest food, some wine, other drinks outside just beyond the glass doors. Paul will stick around for a little while for any of you who'd like to speak to him one-on-one. We're tremendously grateful to you, Paul.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.